Hey everybody, welcome back.
Yeah.
We'll now hear from our Water Management Zone committees. And I'd like to welcome Gina, the Banks Peninsula Chair, Annabelle and Mike, Chair and Deputy Chair of the Christchurch West Melton, and Matt Dodson, Deputy Chair for Sowanup, please. Welcome.
Could you put your mic on, please? No, you've just switched it off.
Okay, Morena, welcome and nice to see you on a beautiful spring day in Otautahi. So just an update of what the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee has been doing since we last spoke to you. So I feel like we've actually been super busy, and a key focus has been working with others in partnership, advocating for ongoing commitment and action through the agencies on the issues that we have identified, information sharing and support to our communities, education and awareness to the broader community, especially around stormwater, and basically we've been having an impact to improve the health of our urban waterways. One of the key activities was our erosion and sediment control workshop in April, which was our joint workshop with the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee, the Christchurch West Melton Water Management Zone Committee, and the Whakaora Healthy Harbour. So this is really a coming together on a common issue and to try and get some solutions around this. It was a huge turnout from the community and agencies and experts, and it was really a where were we at and where do we need to go to. We're looking forward. There's been a huge amount of work that's been done and looking at the opportunities for collaboration. And out of that workshop there were some key areas of focus and that we needed to work on, and there's a whole lot of information in people's heads who are working in this space, and we need to get that practical knowledge and to be able to share that practical knowledge and to be useful and to document it. The opportunities for advocacy, especially around erosion and sediment control, and this is ongoing and in the LTP and annual plan process. To keep an eye on the City Council $9 million Port Hills and Lyttelton Harbour erosion and sediment control project and have an input into that. To work with Banks Peninsula Zone Committee around the soil conservation program on Banks Peninsula and the development of a Port Hills plan.
The Zone Committee has, as you probably are aware, made a number of recommendations and presentations to Council about the need to improve erosion and sediment control across our catchments, particularly on the Port Hills and the Opawaho. I must say the City Council seems to be responding very constructively to those recommendations, and we thank you for that. Consequently, we're looking forward to, at our November meeting, a joint presentation by Environment Canterbury and the City Council officers on where they're at with their erosion and sediment control programs. So we're looking there for what they're doing now and where they may be going to improve those. And we certainly are supporting the initiative from Council about development of a Port Hills plan, particularly tackling erosion and sediment control amongst other things. I'll speak a bit later about the Healthy Water Bodies Action Plan.
I just want to take the time now just to focus on one of the actions that came out of that joint workshop, which was the proposed Port Hills plan. And just to say that I'm aware that it's in Council and the Parks Department and with staff considering this, but we just really want to recommend that to get an overall outcomes for our waterways, this plan needs to be integrated and it needs community involvement. And the overarching principle of Te Mana o Te Wai needs to be where the health of our water bodies is a first priority, needs to be considered, and for all the actions and management, this needs to be what we're seeking to achieve, our healthy waterways. And a ki utai ki tai approach of integrated, there's a whole lot of agencies, there's issues, and it all needs to be integrated together. Therefore, we need a partnership between agencies, mana whenua, landowners and community, and the integration of all the issues. The process and the development of the Port Hills plan is also really important. It needs to be inclusive and participatory, and the process is as important as the outcome. And so you need to community needs to be brought along with that as well. And I can't stress that enough. And recognising and acknowledging that there's a huge amount of work that's being done in this area. There's amazingly strong relationships that need to be maintained and built on. So just to be aware of that. And some of the issues that need to be integrated, so there's obviously erosion and sediment loss from the Port Hills to our waterways, soil conservation and erosion management, the protection and restoration of biodiversity and native habitats, the management of invasive weeds and pests, the management of fire risk, appropriate recreation use, appropriate land use, and the protection of landscape values. So the scope of this plan is quite large, and we are concerned that if it just sits within parks, that the scope is not broad enough. But we really want to address the idea that those conversations need to be happening now, and the process is happening now.
We certainly, the Zone Committee was, I think, one of the first members of the Community Waterways Partnership of Christchurch, and as a body, we're strongly supportive of that, and we're contributing to its deliberations and hui's in a meaningful way. We will continue to do that, and we have the opportunity to also to utilise our action plan and how we orientate our modest budget towards supporting initiatives coming from that partnership members towards healthier waterways. So again, we applaud the Council's role in facilitating, coordinating the functioning of that partnership, a difficult task given there's over 50 members, but an essential task nonetheless. Thank you. And then I'd like to turn to probably what's one of our important issues, and that is the Council's initiative and the recent development and release to that Community Waterways Partnership of the draft Healthy Water Bodies Action Plan for the waterways of Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. It's quite a technical document, well crafted, consistent with the National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management. So this is the initial feedback stage. So the Zone Committee is very interested to continue supporting the development of that action plan over time through a collaborative partnership. We expect it to run concurrent, if not just slightly behind, the bigger developments, I suppose, of the regional policy statement for Canterbury, facilitated by Environment Canterbury. And we look forward to contributing our views into that, both its construction and the actions required to make a real difference over some years.
Be aware that there is a regional education awareness campaign about protecting our waterways and stormwater, awareness around stormwater. And there's been a range of media avenues. You'll see when you read stuff, you often see one of these ads popping up. And we've also provided these templates to the community groups to use for their advocacy and education and awareness. And this initially started as a campaign last year with the Zone Committee, Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee, and it's now been extended to a regional campaign.
In the same vein, the committee continues its annual Stormwater Superhero Awards program. We're trying to make it bigger and better, higher profile, get the message out more broadly. So this year we've actually added a separate category for land development, both commercial and urban. And we would thank the City Council for their commitments to support a sort of an awards ceremony towards the end of the year, which I understand, correct me Mayor if I'm wrong, that you may in fact help us with that award ceremony. And again, thank you for that.
The Zone Committee has been a part of the ECAN Regional Policy Statement engagement, so we acknowledge the huge job that ECAN has around the development of the Regional Policy Statement in line with the Te Mana Aotuai, and with the new priority of freshwater as the first priority, and with new national policy statements. And we saw a need in that engagement process for community groups to try and to support them in their engagement and understanding. And so we facilitated a workshop with the aid of the Environment Canterbury engagement team and planners. We brought together, there was about 30 community groups that came together, and we went through the whole plan and facilitated 2 workshops, a morning workshop and an afternoon workshop, and around water and coastal issues, and setting a vision for freshwater going forward. And there's more stages of engagement around this regional policy statement, and we also see there'll be a key role for the Zone Committee in facilitating and increasing community awareness and enabling people to provide good feedback on that policy statement to align with people's visions.
And finally, it's worth noting that the Zone Committee continues to look at its action plan and adjusting it, and we have, in fact, revised it for this year, and in my view, it's more focused, more deliberately on achieving clearer results. And we've, with our modest $75,000 budget, we've started the process of soliciting applications from community groups for grant funding for their various projects, and we're looking at some funds that we require ourselves for our own initiatives. So that's well in progress.
And we just want to say a big thank you to Shona Slews and Katiki Royale, who were part of the committee and have now moved on. And we want to welcome Amber Moki, who's the new Te Hapu o Ngāti Wheki representative on the committee. And we look forward to working with Amber. So thank you very much.
Right, we're done.
Questions?
Paul, Councillor Cotter.
But it is an excellent report, thank you. And thank you for recognising the work that the council was doing, City Council with you, on the erosion and sediment control. And just to reiterate, you were saying that that's actually proving to be effective in your report, that actually the work is actually doing something.
For me, I think the signs are good. We were on the right track of developing a closer relationship. I think there's a mood for improving erosion and sediment control, both with Environment Canterbury and the City Council, because they operate collectively on some of those issues. And the Port Hills Initiative, again, potentially could be a serious program building on existing commitments to really make a big difference.
Yeah, I know that these are huge pieces of work that are not going to happen overnight, but I think I found your comments really encouraging.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it is great that there's, that the conversations are happening, and I think that's what's really important, that the conversations are moving forward, and we will continue to advocate, and the council will come up with your response as well, but it's working together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Templeton.
Kia ora, thanks so much for that. I'm actually looking to move it, but with an additional resolution, just that, here we go, the council staff work closely with stakeholders, the community and the community board in the development of the Port Hills Management Plan. And just like that.
In the zone.
In the zone committee, you're quite right. That's kind of in the stakeholders, but I'd like to specify it because actually you're right, because you're the ones who... Yeah, so this is something that the community board have already discussed around the table as well for many years, and about having that really, really good process and involving all of those groups that are involved on the Port Hills to make sure that we get the best outcomes and have a really robust process. Yeah, and in fact community boards, because it does cross two community board areas, mostly in one, but there's a section down the other end.
I think it might be appropriate to say the relevant community boards.
And can I just reinforce that process has started already? It's starting. The conversations need to be happening now with staff as well.
That's right.
Okay, well, good.
Thanks so much.
Councillor Johansson.
I just want to check, have the zone committees been engaged with council over the development of the LTP?
We haven't provided feedback yet, no, but that's on our list of things to do. In October we're going to start looking at that.
Okay, I wonder if we could just, given what we've heard yesterday, if we could try and just add a resolution to sort of formalise that approach. Just concerned that we've got quite far down the track.
It's what we do naturally.
Well, in the past I don't think we have.
Yeah, that's what we do.
So...
Right, Pauline's happy. Sorry, you got any more questions, Yanni, please?
Well, I mean, councillors will recall the changes we saw yesterday, quite significant in some of the space. So I feel like, we had a conversation yesterday, and now we've got the conversation today, which is kind of quite contrary. So
So we have representatives on those committees, so I think we've got a good connection.
Yeah. And can I just ask, in terms of the there's obviously some really clear recommendations from the zone committee for the Banks Peninsula, but in terms of West Melton, the whole monitoring of the urban water quality, and this will be no surprise, but obviously the concern around toxic chemical spills into the river and the lack of a coordinated approach to understanding, monitoring, finding out what actually happened. Has the zone committee for West Melton had any sort of thoughts on the similar issues that the Banks Peninsula one has? And I'm just, I guess, interested to know if there's a work program to kind of address those gaps, or whether you know, we can learn from what's being requested from Banks Peninsula to apply that to West Melton.
Well, one of the key actions is around reducing contaminants in our waterways, and the Stormwater Superhero campaign is linked to that, and the process to date of if there is a toxic spill, you know, that is under the ECAN, you know, process of working out where that's come from and reporting on that, and we have asked for feedback on issues that, you know, have happened around that. But yes, there's always room for improvement, and we can but we definitely have a focus, you know, that's what the Stormwater Superhero Awards, and a focus on reducing contaminants. And Mike and I have actually, part of that campaign, have been going around Hayton Stream and talking to businesses and encouraging, you know, businesses to enter and just making them aware of, you know, that their stormwater flows into Hayton Stream and into the Ōpāwaho. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done there, which is being done by staff at the moment.
Good answer. I think we're all thinking we're heading in the right direction. Paul, Councillor Cotter is more than happy to move it, and Councillor Templeton probably going to second it.
Swap it round.
Second. So we're going to move and second. Have we got any debate, please?
Just a quick question of the wording. Should it not specify iwi as well?
A good call. Yep.
Sorry, just
Yep.
I think we're still set to hear from the Banks Peninsula Water Management Zone Committee as well. Yeah. So.
Okay. Right. So everyone happy with that? Thank you for that, Aaron.
Don't forget we've got to hear from Banks Peninsula.
Yeah. So there's another Water Management Zone Committee presenting. So
yes.
2 more Water Management Zone Committees presenting. Thank you.
Oh, so we don't do it all yet. Thank you. I'm just trying to get ahead of myself. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing from us today. I'll take the report as read, and I just want to focus on 2 issues that I'd like to raise today. They are the Port Hills Plan, largely reiterating what the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee has advocated for, and the Birdlings Flat water supply. But first I'd also like to introduce Trudy Bishop, who is our Deputy Chair who's with me today, and also to welcome Tori Peden onto the committee as a co-opted member following her previous contributions as the Chair of the Banks Peninsula Community Board. And I'd also like to thank Aurora Smith, the Te Hapu o Ngāti Wheki Rapaki Runanga representative, who has made a great contribution over the years, as well as 2 years as Deputy Chair. So with regards to the Port Hills Plan, while the Zone Committee is primarily concerned with water quality and biodiversity and the things that influence those like sediment and erosion control, I am aware that a number of other groups, including the Summit Road Society and Summit Road Authority, have advocated for a Port Hills Plan for many years, and their concerns include how the Summit Road and the Port Hills are managed. There is an opportunity here to develop a holistic plan that envisions what we want the Port Hills to be in the future, and that should include how the Port Hills are used by visitors and for recreation, how land is managed, including development controls, to provide support for landscape scale restoration, and to enable a coordinated approach to address issues like fire risk and antisocial behaviour, covering the whole area with one integrated plan, including both private and public land, including the council reserves and other council land. So I encourage council to develop a plan that results in an umbrella organisation that is driven not just by council, but also by Ngā Runanga and other key community groups and agencies. There are many groups working in the area, such as the Kashmir Stream Care Group, Banks Peninsula Conservation Trusts, Te Kākahu Kahukura Initiative, Summit Road Society, Apawa Heathcote River Network, Avon Heathcote Estuary Ihutai Trust, Whakaora landowners, and possibly with support from businesses as well. So there are many ways that a Port Hills plan could take shape. For example, it could be modelled after the Whakaora Healthy Harbour Initiative and Whakarapo Littleton Harbour, or it might be that Te Kākahu Kahukura becomes a vehicle for this, or it could be something else. We can have an integrated plan that guides all users and landowners so that we have a real biodiversity jewel in the crown of Christchurch, a place with thriving biodiversity, clean water coming off the hills into the estuary and harbour, which will help council meet its stormwater consent conditions and increase resilience to climate change, capture carbon, great recreational facilities, as well as the general enjoyments of the parks and reserves and views across Christchurch. So that's also addressing community wellbeing, improving mental and physical health, and drawing visitors to the city. The second issue I'd like to raise is the chlorination of the Birdlings Flat water supply. We had members from the community speak to us during our August meeting, raising their concerns. Birdlings Flat is a very small and close-knit community, and they organised a survey of residents, with the result being that no one wants their water supply to be chlorinated. They feel that the deep bore on Kaiteriti Spit, together with UV treatment that they have had, should be sufficient, especially given that this water supply serves less than 500 people. They believe they have a good case for an exemption to chlorination, and if they can't get an exemption, then perhaps nobody can. The community members that spoke to us are also sceptical of some of the assessment and monitoring work that's been done, and feel that an independent, satisfactory and fair assessment of risk is needed. They're frustrated that the Water Services regulator Taumata Arawai will not open a discussion with them, and they seem to be unwilling to communicate with communities on their concerns and take them on a journey. The community have simply been told that the water supplier can apply for an exemption, and this has left the Birdlings Flat community feeling powerless, vulnerable and pretty upset, really. Councillor Fields has been working in communication with the Birdlings Flat residents, and I encourage council to further support the Birdlings Flat community with their concerns over chlorination and in applying for an exemption to chlorination. I'd also like to note that this new regulatory environment has the potential to put large costs on the provision of drinking water in places like Banks Peninsula, where we have many small public and private community supplies, and community concerns are likely to continue to emerge as some of these smaller schemes come under scrutiny in the future. So in summary, the Banks Peninsula Water Zone Committee supports the development of an integrated Port Hills plan, and I encourage you to make sure it's an overarching holistic plan with a clear vision for the future that covers all issues and results in an umbrella organisation to bring groups working in the area together and to act as a vehicle for funding and coordination of work. The committee also supports the Birdlings Flat community in their goal to gain an exemption to chlorination of their water supply, and encourage council to assist them in that. And before I close, I'd just like to mention that we have advertised for applications for our action plan budget for projects that help improve water management, enhance biodiversity or engage the community, and we typically take both applications from private landowners and community organisations, and we're hoping to get most applications by 15th of September. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scandrett.
Yeah, thank you. Look, if you do get an exemption from Te Mata Arawai, please let the rest of New Zealand know how you do it.
Well, we're hoping that council will
help us in that.
Yeah, will help us in that, and also just to engage in dialogue with the communities, because I think they also feel unheard, and you know they're not getting that dialogue with Taumata Arawai, so I think it's really needs to be done through council potentially.
It's a really sensitive issue because, you know, we've spent a lot trying to get there and then the goalposts keep moving. That's my personal opinion, and I don't think it's fair in any community. So good, yeah, we will do our best for you, and I know that Tyrone's been working really hard on it, but goalposts keep moving.
Okay, Councillor Johansson.
I don't know if it's a question for you or more of our staff, but I was just keen to know, like in the report, there's a number of sort of CWMS targets, but when I look at the ECAM website, I see a lot of them are not met. I'm just wondering, is there anything that we have like for the peninsula that shows what the actual targets are and what the level of progress is towards meeting them? Because I see the actions, but I don't see the clear measurement about we've not met the target, we have met the target, how are we tracking?
It's probably a better staff question, but I'm not sure that anyone's here today. I know that the reporting for the zone committee has not specifically matching targets with the outcomes, but I think there are still monitoring reports being done. But yeah, I'm not sure of the details. Sorry.
So do the zone committees get, like, do you get a copy of the monitoring report around the targets, and then get asked for feedback around what's being done to meet those targets if they're not being met?
We typically work more to our action plan in the zone implementation program, and then I guess what we work to sort of feeds up into that sort of region-wide monitoring. But yeah, we're not specifically for Banks Peninsula looking at how we're meeting those targets. It's more through our action plan. Is
because reading the ECAN targets, reading the ECAN targets is quite depressing because a lot of them haven't been met. And then, but I see all the good work that you're doing, which is incredible, and I'm really delighted to see. But I just feel like there's this disconnect. Yeah. So I'm trying to understand how we can kind of get visibility of that.
Yeah, we've got one or two questions each, and you've had them.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So maybe, I don't know if anyone...
And
yeah, I don't think staff are here that would probably be best to get a clearer answer for them.
Thank you very much.
Well done. So you now have Matt Dobson.
Thank you.
Yep. Selwyn Zone Committee.
Good morning, kia ora. My name is Matt Dodson. I'd like to have an apology for Les, who's currently giving a very similar presentation to the Selwyn District Council. And I'd also like to, you probably all know Marie. Marie's a new member of our committee, and along with Kane Tuwari, who is a Rupaki Runanga rep. As a committee, we'd love to welcome and really looking forward to seeing your experience and connections to our areas. Some of you may be wondering why the Selwyn Te Waihora zone are presenting to the Christchurch City Council. And the reason being that the top of the Horsewell pokes its head into our zone. So the top of the catchment is within Selwyn and then flows into Christchurch, West Mountain.
Just the whole Horsewell River catchment is within the zone committee area.
Okay. So this is actually my first presentation. I didn't realise I could do a PowerPoint, so I'm going to read off a piece of paper. But I'm sure that'll be fine. And I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of months is getting a lot of information from different groups around groundwater and surface water and different technologies and research that have been undertaken in the Selwyn Te Waihora zone. And this is building up our understanding of how these systems work and how water is moving from, say, rivers through to groundwater and down to spring-fed streams. We've had kind of presentations from Selwyn District Council biodiversity officers and other kind of interested groups around their activities within the zone. And I see one of the functions of the Selwyn Zone Committee as being kind of coordinating a lot of these efforts and kind of asking questions on behalf of the community and of the councils that we are committed to. At the end of last financial year, we had as Mike said, a modest budget to hand out to local owners for planting and the like. We're very pleased to be able to support a number of those projects. One in particular being Boat Creek Restoration Project on the edge of the Raikaia River. Out of your patch, I understand, but if you ever get down there, it's really worth a look. That's a community group. They've come together under a great organisation and done some really great things. We've also been supporting Ellesmere Agriculture Incorporated on a number of projects, particularly around wetland projects, restorations of wetlands within the zone, and helping funding some of their coordination of their staff. And also some kids discovery plant out days, particularly in the top of the Horsewell. As the other committees have talked about, this year we're getting $75,000 to provide funding to local groups. We are also advertising. We are currently advertising coming back on the 29th of September We have already allocated approximately $3,000 to a Curiosity Day for regenerative farming on the Selwyn Plains, run by Quorum Sense. But we're looking for kind of to advertising and allocate that money as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I want to note that that funding can be used for community-led initiatives, not just community-based projects as well. The committee is involved in a number of other organisations. Of note is the Coes Forward Working Group. You may have remember all the uproar around the Coes Forward a few years ago around kind of drinking and swimmability. So our members are actively participating in that group. The Rakaia Catchment Environmental Enhancement Society. So as part of then Trustpower's consent conditions, they were providing a certain amount of money to fund community-led projects within the Rakaia catchment. And of course, that connection into the Wairakura Te Waro Te Waira governance group and the work that Ngā Tahu and local landowners, Selwyn and Christchurch City Council are doing in that space. One of the things that I really want to kind of talk about is that we're a relatively new committee. The committee itself has been going since 2009, but we're quite a new membership. And this, to me, is an opportunity to start looking at our priorities and start really kind of fixing in on things that we really want to do. So we've had some brainstorming themes sessions, and I think what really came out is kind of trying to get the community at the heart of our decisions and trying to get involvement and presence within the community. Collaborating and engaging and sharing our knowledge. There's a group of people that are very knowledgeable in our committee, Marie and others, who have a lot of experience to kind of share. I think some of the key focuses that came out of that was continuing on with some community drinking water testing. So there's a handheld nitrate probe that we can use where people kind of bring in their water supplies and we can kind of give them a sense of the quality in that. We really want to use that as an opportunity to talk not only about nitrates, that is a contaminated concern, but there is other things in water that people should be and need to be aware of. We're also looking at doing a bus trip around the Horseville, and this is to connect with people around those. Yep, indeed, yeah. To connect with people around the waterways and like-minded individuals and promote projects in the catchments. So we have support from Councillor Gideon, and she's working with the Upper Selwyn apologies. So one of the STC's councillors is also looking at building a community group in the top of the Selwyn catchment, and she's actively kind of working with on that, and we're trying to support her in that fiction. Coming back, sorry, my notes are a little bit out of order. I just want to kind of acknowledge Councillor Moore for providing some support for that bus trip and
planning workshop.
And the workshop, yeah. And my last point will be around kind of regional policy statement, and maybe I could address some of your questions that you had, Yanni. So the MPS and the new freshwater kind of statements have an obligation for regional councils basically to go back and look at their plans. Environment Canterbury have chosen to look at their RPS between now and 2024. That RPS affects not only rural communities but actually district councils and urbans too. It sets out things around stormwater and expectations around services and things like that. So it's something that we all should be really interested in. It sets that vision for going forward. And our zone committee are participating in that process. And as it continues, we're hoping to kind of get into the community and be a conduit for them to come back. just I guess going back to those questions around targets and measurements, there is a report produced by Environment Canterbury that does individual targets and measurements for that. That's Canterbury-wide. Each zone committee has a little bit of a different process. So in Selwyn Te Wairoa, we went through a thing called a zone implementation program, which was basically setting out, looking at the current state of the catchment, what were the issues, and then setting out an action plan to resolve those issues. Part of that goes into the regional plan, into nutrient limits and setting on-farm limits, and part of that is encouraging landowners and people to look after their own waterways and encourage them through planting or looking after riparian management. At this phase of that planning kind of cycle, I see our role as more supporting the community to get those projects underway. This RPS, though, is the opportunity to really kind of have to influence the way that regulation will come forward. And the next first phase after that will be the development of the regional plan for the Canterbury region. So that's me. Thank you very much for allowing us to talk. It's been a real privilege for me. And if there's any questions, I'd love to take them.
Thank you very much, Matt. Councillor Cotter, please.
Kia ora, thank you so much for the report. I'm just wondering, has your committee ever discussed the recognised maximum acceptable value for nitrates in the water at 11.3 milligrams per litre? Because I noticed in the report you're talking about from Environment Canterbury, there are 26% of the wells that they tested had concentrations above half of the MAV, and 13% had concentrations above the 13.3. Have you ever queried that? Because I know that our council has queried that with the Ministry of Health.
Sure.
And asked them to look at that and reduce because it's quite controversial that that's way too high.
Yeah. So I think my background was actually in hydrogeology. So this is something I've been kind of privy to for the last few years. My personal opinion is that the science is still developing. There is some really good work coming out of Europe around what concentrations and the effects on cancer, and particularly in bowel cancer. I think there is a lot of work to be done. There is some great work being done in New Zealand right now in the University of Otago and Victoria. That 11.3 is based on blue baby syndrome. So it's meant to protect pregnant women and babies consuming water and then having some adverse
Do you know when those studies will be completed, the Otago one particularly?
I imagine they'll take probably 5-10 years to come through, and there's going to be a lot of debate around them. I think it's very topical. I suspect you'll hear from multiple sides arguing that different what would be an appropriate value.
So basically your committee won't be doing anything until you get some confirmed results for New Zealand studies?
I'd imagine so.
Yeah, okay.
I think the other thing I'd say is that with the NPSFN, the National Policy Statement for Freshwater, they've set some specific limits that are much lower than the MAV, and that's around protection of ecology and values.
Which are far more sensitive than humans to nitrates.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Nice.
Okay, just one question for me. Can you go back on that presentation? Is that your department?
What's that, sorry?
The presentation? Oh, somewhere in there was a photo and it said, report this. Okay, it was a picture of a there. So when it says report it, what are we meaning there? Because I know that particular sump has actually got it's got filter fabric put in the sump to stop stuff going in. What I don't want to do is put something out there and have every man and their dog running around, oh, we've got to report this when it's not really an issue. We've just got to be careful what we put out there, because you might end up with so much stuff back when someone's already making a good effort to do that. Just be a wee bit careful.
So that's actually Christchurch, West Melton.
Yeah, but yeah. You speak the same language. Yeah, I'm just putting it out. Yes, I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to put that out there. So, Andre, have you got a question? Sorry, okay. So we have a mover and seconder for this. Is there any debate? Councillor Johansson.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the work that our zone committees do. I think, we get a lot of information around very specific projects that they're involved with, which is great. But I do think as a council, we do need maybe to talk to ECAN about how we're monitoring the targets. And to give you a really clear example, one of the targets for freshwater species and their habitat is an upward trend in diversity and abundance of native fish populations. Now, according to ECAN's monitoring, that target has not been met, and they say that they do not conduct regular fish monitoring to enable us to show if we're meeting the goal. However, the data they do have from 2017 Department of Conservation shows that the freshwater fishes continue to decline. And for those of us who are aware of toxic chemical spills into rivers and are interested in understanding what the impact is, it's quite hard when we're not measuring it or monitoring it to know how progress is being made against this target, despite all the really good work that the local zone committees are doing. It does seem that if you're not measuring something, it's very hard to know if you're making progress. So, I think there's so much more that we need to get in terms of just an understanding of how all the local work is feeding into meeting the bigger targets. And if we're not measuring the bigger targets, then what do we need to do in partnership with ECAN to make sure that they are being met? I just am absolutely staggered that we had a toxic chemical spill where hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of fish were killed, but we've had no environmental impact assessment of what the consequence has been, other than just anecdotal evidence that people have self-reported. So there's a lot of really good work going on. I think the other thing that's really concerning to me is, that we need to try and, I think, work at an earlier stage around the LTP development with our zone committees, because obviously I know that things like the Port Hills Plan and sediment and erosion control are really, really important. But when we have the presentation yesterday that is publicly available now that shows that some of those budgets are being cut or deferred, then it does, I think, not get a good outcome where we can kind of work together. So I think we need to look at what those opportunities are, I think, as part of the LTP co-development with our zone committees to ensure that the things that they think are important towards meeting our targets are being funded and being put on budget. And I think their expertise and their knowledge at a local level is really important. So, I think that's a work in progress, and hopefully we can look forward. But I just did want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that the zone committees do. I'm happy to say I was pretty sceptical of the model when it was first established, but I've been proven very wrong. I think the local work that they do is really super, and it's really good to see. I just think we need to take a bit of a higher level around understanding how we're meeting the Canterbury water management targets.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald. And then,
thank you. I just wanted to clarify something around the talk of cuts in Three Waters, because I think for people that haven't seen yesterday's presentation, which is now publicly available, it may give the impression that actually the council staff have been away and cutting significantly from budgets. And I just kind of think that actually when we're looking at this kind of thing, the reality is we're working through a system as a collective council, and it's really unfair on the council officials who, after we have instructed them through a letter of expectation to go away and do preliminary work, get to a position where they're beaten up basically in public around cutting budgets. I do not think that's acceptable. And I mean, I know you can't rule that kind of thing out of order, but it's not helpful for the general conduct of council to imply that we're cutting money from Three Waters when all we're doing is having LTP discussions based off staff advice.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrick.
Yeah, thank you. I'd reiterate that it's nothing has been cut or deferred. It's for the public to decide through the long-term plan. We've just asked our staff to put up options for us to discuss with the public of Christchurch. So I just want to reiterate that and make that very clear. And it's incredibly hard for all of us if we're sniping at each other and at staff, and because there's something we don't agree with. I do think I would really like a. Sorry,
one time. Wait.
I'd actually, if we could, have a meeting with elected members with ECAN and really understand what the process is and what's happening with our waterways, because I do agree that there has to be a better oversight and understanding to support the zone committees. And I do apologise for the discussion about the long-term plan. You certainly don't deserve that, and thank you very much to you all for the work you do.
Thank you. And with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried.
Central Plains.
Okay, Central Plains Water Trust. We've got Pat